Welcome back, True Seeker. March 14th, 2025, Pi Day. U.S. to probe Colombia protests for terrorism violations, official says. And again, in the United States, you had the right to protest protected under the First Amendment, something that was largely chipped away at after the September 11th attacks in New York City, also where Colombia is. And of course, Donald Trump was part of that day, being part of the conversation in the media, worried about his insurance firm that he had in the World Trade Centers, offering some conspiracy theories about 9/11 at the time. But now here we are coming up on the 24th anniversary of 9/11, and once again, protest and terrorism being brought together. After 9/11, you could only protest in what the government designated free speech zones. And to some effect, cities are still doing that. But again, here, college students who protested now being looked at as if they're terrorists. And consider this was a protest at Columbia yesterday, March 13th, the anniversary of us getting the first Jesuit Pope, Pope Francis, 12 years earlier. But again, these were students protesting on behalf of a Muslim populace, and they're now being investigated as if they're terrorists, when, of course, in New York, the attack on the buildings that turned the buildings to dust as they crumbled into nothing that day, of course, that was blamed on Muslims, even though there's no proof that that was the case. Remember, they couldn't find the planes or the black boxes, but somehow they recovered all the terrorist passports, nothing else. Again, you got to be kind of stupid to believe these stories put out by the mainstream, which so many people think if you dare question, you're a conspiracy theorist, whereas if you believe what's in the news, you're simply a retard. But anyway, let's read the reporting on how Donald Trump, who hates the First and Second Amendment, how his administration is now trying to turn protesting into terrorism. New York, March 14th. The U.S. Justice Department said on Friday it was looking into what it said were possible violations of terrorism laws during protests over the Gaza war at Columbia University, putting fresh pressure on the epicenter of last year's nationwide anti-Israel activism. Let's not forget that war began on the anniversary of us invading Afghanistan, and that war also began on Putin's birthday, who is the leader of Russia, which used to be the Soviet Union before it started to break apart at the start of the 90s. And it's a reminder that the CIA funded bin Laden to interfere with the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, how these things come full circle. And here we are on Pi Day. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the investigation was part of President Donald Trump's mission to end anti-Semitism in this country, calling it a pushback that was long overdue. You know, they need to update the definition of anti-Semitism so that it says the people of Khazaria. Remember, they were the same ones who told us to declare a war on terror and go into Afghanistan and Iraq. Civil rights proponents criticized the move, saying that protesters were covered by the First Amendment of the Constitution, which protected rights including free speech. Or is that civil rights proponents, or would that be Americans? Would Americans say that? I think Americans would say that. You know who's protecting the Khazarians who have adopted the label of Semites? Europeans. Yeah. Very liberal Europe is the one that's not respecting free speech for the chosen ones. The announcement is the latest in a series of signals that the Trump administration has no intention of easing its crackdown on pro-Palestinian student activists and university policies that it says allow anti-Semitism to flourish on campus. The Trump administration has told Columbia that the school must make a series of policy changes as a precondition for beginning talks on restoring $400 million in federal funding suspended last week. The demand spelled out in a letter dated Thursday coincided with a search of 2 dormitory rooms by federal agents at Columbia's New York campus. I wonder how much of this went on right after 9/11, because I still remember I was a freshman in college when 9/11 happened, and our English class, the whole plan for the year changed. All of a sudden, we each got a country to research in the Middle East and research it from the angle of terrorism. I was assigned the country Yemen. I told my teacher how ridiculous I thought it was, and I had to sign a behavior plan that I would not go against the teacher's directives. I felt like I was in middle school all over again. Anyway, the searches came a week after immigration agents detained Mohammed Khalil, the leader of last year's protests at Columbia, in a bid to deport him that so far has been blocked in federal court. Okay. Earlier this week, the Department of Education warned that it was investigating 60. Oh, 60. Say it as did Donald Trump just win the 60th election and I put win with a big asterisk since it was all rigged? Does Donald Trump equal 60 in Gematria? Is it exactly 60 weeks into the Jesuit Ignatian year, July 14, 2022, that he said he'd run in the upcoming election? And, then that same day, his ex-wife was announced dead 45 years after their marriage. Like I said, this protest was on the anniversary of the first Jesuit Pope's birthday, the 12th anniversary, when 78's the 12th triangular number, and Jesuit equals 78. Like, that's how old Jesuit-educated Donald Trump is, who went to Fordham in New York. How you guys like that new movie, 0 Day, where De Niro, the former president's wearing a Fordham sweatshirt, and the current president, the film's a black woman wearing a Stanford sweatshirt, like Kamala went to Stanford and the chump went to Fordham. Investigating 60 schools. Yeah, if you haven't seen that one, it turns out the government had a conspiracy to take down the nation with a planned cyber attack. Just like how the Jesuits keep simulating a cyber attack, cyber polygon. Anyway, investigating 60 schools for allegedly tolerating a hostile environment for Jews. In a related move, it said on Friday it was looking into complaints that 45 universities engaged with a diversity program that set eligibility based on race. It said such activities violated in a 1964 civil rights law. Isn't it crazy how they just keep doing this? Just put the obvious numbers right in front of your face. Nobody catches on. Dorm searches. The campus demonstrations that precipitated the federal scrutiny began after the October 2023 attack by Hamas on Israel. Let's not forget how Benjamin Netanyahu equals 282, and that happened 282 days after he came back into power. Some people say the gematria thing's too complicated, but then again, if you've passed second grade, it should be self-explanatory. And the subsequent U.S.-supported Israeli assault on Gaza, the Palestinian enclave controlled by Hamas, which the U.S. has designated as a terrorist group. Protesters demanded that university endowments divest from Israeli interests and that the U.S. end military assistance to Israel. Oh man, what a terrorist thing to do. The Trump administration has accused Columbia of an inadequate response to the weeks-long encampment the activists set up on campus and to a brief occupation of a campus building. These people are protesting a government that's funded by the U.S. taxpayers that literally has been blowing up women and children and hospitals. But hey, that's not terrorism, is it? The university has defended itself, saying it has worked to combat anti-Semitism. At the same time, it has sought to fend off accusations by civil rights groups that it is letting the government erode academia's free speech protections. Brian House, a senior staff attorney from the American Civil Liberties Union and part of Khalil's legal team, said the Justice Department probe was misguided. The First Amendment does not allow for grounds to conflate between being pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas, he said at a briefing. Agents from the Department of Homeland Security conducted the dorm searches after serving Columbia with warrants signed by a federal magistrate. Interim President Katrina Armstrong said in a statement, "No one was detained, no items were removed, and no further action was taken," she said. Guess it was just a show of force. Blanche said the searches were part of a probe into whether Columbia University harbored immigrants on its campus who were in the country illegally. Students say federal immigration agents have been repeatedly spotted at dorms and student housing around Columbia's Manhattan campus. Isn't it funny, just like how Orwellian all of this is? You know, taking away rights in the name of the Khazarians. Right now, people are taking their papers with them because they're afraid they could be taken away by ICE. Case in point, my dad's wife, who's a legal citizen from Mexico, where she was, she saw a bunch of people get rounded up, and it totally freaked her out. People got their papers on them. Among the demands in Thursday's letter to the school, and not to mention Elon's doing the salute in tribute to Werner von Braun, the Nazi who wrote the book about him, inventing his character that he plays that so many people are fooled by, like all these puppets on the world stage. And then, of course, Werner von Braun's wife died the same day of his double Sieg Heil. I mean, it really couldn't be. Everything's doublespeak, everything's Orwellian, everything's dishonest, and the proles can't see it for what it is. Among the demands in Thursday's letter to the school, the Trump administration said Columbia must formally define anti-Semitism. Oh, okay, so the letter actually went out yesterday on the Pope's birthday, the same day as the protest. Okay. Formally define anti-Semitism, ban the wearing of masks intended to conceal identity or intimidate, and place its Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African studies departments under academic receivership, which would take control out of the hands of their faculties. It also demanded that the school reform its admissions and international recruiting policies in compliance with federal law, but offered no specifics. Columbia said it was reviewing the letter. We are committed at all times to advancing our mission, supporting our students, and addressing all forms of discrimination and hatred on our campus, it said in a statement. What about hatred for the First and Second Amendment? Because that's what Trump has. He doesn't like the First Amendment, and he said, I like take the guns first, due process second, which means he also doesn't like it either, which means he's not an American, which means he's not fit to lead, like none of these criminals in the District of Criminals, District of Columbia, where they use the University of Columbia in New York, which was also once the capital for this ritual. This week, it said it had meted out a range of punishments, including suspensions, expulsions, and the revocation of degrees to students who occupied the building last spring. Remember how they rated that one dorm room 56 years to the day? Don't even get me started on the 56 rituals. It all points back to the Jesuits. It did not name the students or say how many were disciplined. As hundreds of Khalil's supporters demonstrated at Columbia's main gate on Friday, a graduate student passing by who asked to be identified only by his first name, Dimitri, said the mood on campus was depressing. Is that because... Never mind. The federal government can't be dictating what and whom it does and doesn't teach, like who can and cannot be admitted, he said. The story has been refiled to add byline. Oh, okay. All right. Let me know what you think, Truth Seeker. I think it's revolution or bust. Till next time.